Hello everyone, you're listening to the With Joe Weeby podcast Harry Potter series. You can catch this and other episodes on this podcast, but you're listening to the episode on Voldemort and Voldemort's backstory. So in this one we do a bit of an unpack, almost like a psychological read, or an unpacking of some of the big, human traps that we're led into, and the contrast between him and some of the other key characters like Harry and Dumbledore. But previous episode was extensively on Harry. One following this will be deep on Dumbledore, and you can just stay in tune with the series on YouTube or any of the podcast players you use. But yeah, apart from that, this one was one of my favourite ever episodes, so enjoy and talk to you soon.
We have this dynamic throughout. This is how I see the books, right? With the 27-year-old Joe, with the experiences I had, things we talked about in the Unhealthy Ambition episode. This is just the lens I couldn't help seeing it through after rereading it. Voldemort. Dumbledore one side is like the South Pole. Voldemort on the other end is like the North Pole. And then you got Harry, who's kind of sitting
in
the middle, able to go down both paths. He's tied to Voldemort, by the scar on his head, the history, the blood, and he has so many similarities to Tom Riddle, right? He's an orphan. He grew up in a place that did not show him love. He was kind of prodigious kind of student. Tom's like more marvelous at school than Harry is, but they have so many similarities. Harry gets a bit concerned by them. He's like, am I headed down that path? And I think it's very interesting to unpack why Voldemort is the way he is. In the books, so often as is the case in reality. And then we'll do the same for Dumbledore. Right? And in the books, which is so often the case in life, is that you get the iceberg effect, where you see the tip, you see the result of whatever happened to someone growing up, and all the cultural forces on them. And then you see that's the person, and you interact with them, and then you judge them for really their behaviour. And then normally afterwards, sometimes you get the chance to see the deeper story behind them, beneath the surface. Pardon me. And you start to understand why they are the way they are. That mission of just trying to always just looking to hopefully to understand people is normally the real relief in life. DeMello talks about it. Always trying to change things. If you'd understand things, just understand, then they would change. But we always want to fix everyone else. So that's quite powerful. So diving into Voldemort, the backstory is, in the 6th book, we really go into that. Yeah, like for the rest of this episode, it's just fingers in ears.
Shit.
Yeah. Well, you had plenty of time. It's like otherwise we'd be waiting years to do the series.
I'm just kidding.
I'm just having a laugh myself. He's descended. So the Slytherin house, right?
Yep.
Yep. So there were 4 founders of Hogwarts. That's the four houses they have. Slytherin is the kind of the darker one, unfortunately, and his mother's line is descended from Slytherin himself. So, but they have nothing left when you see his grandfather. You see his grandfather, Marvolo Gaunt is his name, and they have nothing left. They live in some shithole shack. They've butchered the wealth of that line. All they have left is the pride. It's such a powerful characterization. Such a simple character. Doesn't do much in the story, that family. But they have just hollowed out and they have nothing left but their pride. You know what I mean? They're living in a shack in a wreckage, but they're like, look, I've got Slytherin's ring. I'm someone. You can't do this. We're royal. We're full pure blood wizards of the most noble kind. Because that's the superiority.
Yeah.
Right? It's muggles, muggle blood, and then you got pure blood wizards. Harry's half-blood. You know what I mean? So it's just always, like everything else every genocide in society, it's just a trivial difference that is an excuse to have a power struggle. And it's so futile, it hurts. But it always looks futile when you're looking at someone else's power struggle. Yet every day we are engaged in futile power struggles, and we think they're so justified.
Yeah.
And who's the moron? You know, we are. I am.
No.
So, yeah. Don't, Luke. Don't defend me. Don't defend me.
Joe, we are the seekers of truth.
We got our egos removed, though,
Yeah,
right? Okay,
we
we're
are.
all good from this point on.
Everyone else's information is just completely incorrect. And
Thank God we found the truth.
Thank
Otherwise, everyone would be.
I'm aware.
Everyone
Seriously?
everyone would be fucked. They're so lucky to have us.
I can't believe I'm so aware. I just love life. It's fantastic.
And that's how Voldemort feels.
Shit.
It's like, no one's going to do anything about this. I'll do something about it. So the grandfather really mistreats his daughter. Probably because it's seen as a woman, she's not going to carry on the name. Very classic, you know. How often has that been the case throughout history? So she's a real withdrawn type and a hopeless with magic herself, you know. And the son's just like a nut job and terrorizes muggles. And then they arrest the son, and then the dad, you know, Marvolo Gaunt dies. His son, I think his name's Morphin. He, you know, eventually, he's not doing much. He's a nut job. And then the girl is obsessed with this muggle, this handsome, rich muggle, Tom Riddle, right? Senior. And she just has to have him.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah, so she has magic, obviously. So she uses a love potion to seduce him, right? To get him away from his actual wife, and she, you know, to marries him. And she's she's playing her own little. So she's insecure, right? She has desire, right? And this is when people have desires and they figure out ways of hacking to get what they actually desire. It all seems so great, but you're just giving yourself relief. Relief doesn't last. It's like money. It's like getting the person you want and hassling them until they eventually. I don't think it really actually ever works in the long run. There's always a compromise in some area, perhaps, which is not wanting anything you might want, but it's just the desire of like, I really will not be quite myself or happy if I don't have this. So she eventually is like, well, you know, I want him to feel like he actually loves me. It's not enough that she can just get him to be there and do all the things a husband would do under a potion, even though that's the result. So that's what we talk about as the result, right? The result, but you got the result. But the result's not satisfying because at the end of the day, we all want love. And
deep
nothing,
stuff.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Seriously.
Nothing actually replaces it,
It's ridiculous.
right? So she eventually weans him off the love potion. And of course, he's like,
Oh, yeah.
So he fucking runs off back to his family. She's like, but she's having her kid, little baby Tom, names him after his father, which is such a attachment thing, right? Like to replace the Tom I lost. Here is a Tom, and I'll project all that onto you. But she obviously gives him up for adoption, and she goes away and she dies. You're loving this. So what happens next? He grows up in an orphanage, not knowing that he's magical, like Harry, not knowing who he is, not knowing he's got royal blood, but knowing he's been abandoned, wondering who his parents are. He starts to notice that he's got abilities, but he's already, when Dumbledore meets him to tell him he's a wizard and do the Hagrid moment, he knows that there's something special about him, but he's already got such a dark shade to him.
Wow.
At the age of 11 or 10 or whatever it is. He's already got such a dark shade. And he uses his magic to control people already. You know, the ones that upset him or don't fit in with him, like a temperamental child, he uses it over them and he scars them and he does things to hurt them, causes them pain, causes pain to animals and stuff like that too. And he collects trophies already from his victims. He already is collecting trophies. And immediately I pause there and I think about all the people in society who don't know how vain they are, and all the people who are coming from a place of ego always need their trophy, and it's just in one form or another. The Dan Locke video and the Marvel
Fuck, that's
heroes. That's so heartbreaking when I watch that. It's someone who's traumatized, obviously at the stage in life where people normally want toys, and that must have been the time he was traumatized, and he's still stuck there, and so he needs the trophies, the toys. For a lot of, I've talked about it. My trophies was other people for a while, and we see that in Professor Slughorn. You know, Sixth book is quite powerful in that way. We'll talk about Slughorn later, but you know, they always have because they need the thing. This is a proof. This is the relic of my greatness. So he's already collecting trophies, and bless you, my friend.
You use me.
Yeah, way to break the tension. And
This is incredible stuff.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's already, you know, doing that this age, and Dumbledore just knows he's got to watch this kid. He doesn't have, and Dumbledore's super wise, super alert. He doesn't have a concept for that this kid's the darkest wizard of all time. Yeah, I mean, Harry asks him, "Did you know?" And he goes, "You asking if I knew what he would become?" No, I had no idea. I knew there was something off about him, but I had no idea what he was capable of or the path he would. And it's an interesting question, you know, there's that famous literature concept of just no black and white answers. And was it too late for someone to intervene by that point? Can anything stop the young Tom Riddle becoming Voldemort at that point? I don't know. I don't really have a perspective. I'm not quite sure. You know, because he's grown up feeling abandoned. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is a very interesting character in society because everyone looks at the output and thinks he's a hero, successful. And so often he's used as this person to justify people being fuckwits now in companies and all these life situations. And I look, shouldn't say it that way because I was never there. I was never there.
Yeah.
This is the thought leader model. Use stories about people you didn't know and didn't observe. I was never there, but there's so many reports, right, of terrible things.
Yeah.
Terrible treatment of people and very unrealistic behaviours. And he's a character who's used to justify that maltreatment. I've seen people like, well, Steve Jobs did that. That's how you get results. You got to push people. You got to be harsh. That's the creative way. I think it's very fooled by randomness. Steve Jobs was an orphan. Not an orphan, sorry. He was put up for adoption. His parents couldn't look after him. And he had loving, from the accounts, it seems he had quite good, loving, adopting parents, for whatever they're called, not foster parents, just his parents who adopted him.
Yeah.
Seemed like beautiful people from the accounts and biographies and stuff. But wasn't enough. It's so often the case with people who are adopted or feel like they've been abandoned. And there's this quote in the Walter Isaacson biography of Steve Jobs that keeps bringing up, he who was abandoned abandons. And Jobs does the same thing with his first daughter. He abandons her, Lisa, but he names a computer model after her. You see, yeah. You're seeing the psychology of like, I'm too insecure to go be your dad, but here, look how great a dad I'm going to be. I'm going to name this after you. And it's not that he doesn't love his daughter. Like the Dursley thing, it's just like there's all this resistance inbuilt. Some people say, but you know, if we didn't have Steve Jobs, we wouldn't have these computers and this and that and all this sort of stuff.
We're recording this off.
Sorry?
We're recording.
Yeah, which we're recording this off, right? Not my software, but yours, my hardware. But I kind of think, my current thinking is, well, at least we have something for all that pain and arduous whatever, you know. The Matthew Perry, I just gave you the book on Matthew Perry, who's Chandler from Friends, for anyone who's unfamiliar. Reading that story, there's a guy who was 9 months old, his parents split and they live on, one's in Canada, one's in California, and he's getting sent back and forth to spend time with both of them, flying alone from a young age. And it's obviously dug the void. Like it really looks like that dug the void that allowed this huge addiction, sensitivity to all these addictions, opioids and alcohol and smoking and neediness. his whole life. His desperation for fame, his inability to keep a partner. The one thing he wants at the end of the book is he wants to find he's just looking for love. He wants a partner, wants to have kids, always loved kids. And, it's Gabor Mate stuff, you just the way you interpret the world when you're a baby, before you even have a memory, before you're able to really remember things long term, is so deep. It's so deeply embedded in you. You can't be talked out of it. But that's how we form, So this is how Voldemort grows up. And it's interesting because you can start to feel bad for the guy. And the reason why I highlight it is these people act from a place of pain then for the rest of their lives. But the justification for how they're trying to fill that void becomes so elaborate. And the ones I get most concerned about, the ones who are least honest about, I am carrying pain. And that's Voldemort. Voldemort is never a sob story to people. He's looking to fill that void and ask the questions. Who am I? Where do I come from? Because he's so good at everything at school, he's convinced his dad must be whatever, a top shit. But he can't find any Riddle in all the research, all that. He can't find Riddle anywhere. So he resigns to the fact that maybe his dad's not a wizard, and looks in the mum's side. And there he finds a story of descendants from Salazar Slytherin himself, who created the Chamber of Secrets, who could talk to snakes like he can, which is a dark wizarding ability only. And now he's got a story to latch onto. Now here, I think is very interesting, because you have this genetics argument, all right? Like the apple never falls far from the tree. Hello, everyone. I'm interrupting myself speaking. Sorry. Joe here. If you haven't met me before, I'm a writer, podcaster, do various other stuff, and you can check some of the work out on my website if you're at all interested. But I will be telling you right now quickly about Constant Student, which is basically, if you like what's being talked about in this episode, basically a community for people who like exploring these things. It has a bit of an educational / humanist kind of vibe to it. It's normally free. I don't know how it'll evolve in future, but you can just check out the website www.constantstudent.com.au if you're interested in a community that could connect you to other people interested in this sort of stuff. That's all I have to say for now. I'll let you get back to, hopefully, a very interesting and compelling episode. Like the son will take after, wow, his dad was a prick. No surprises, he's a prick too. Stuff like that. Like it's inherited. But I don't know if that's my reading of the Voldemort character. I think my reading of the Voldemort character, the Tom Riddle character, is ego by default means you're looking for a story of your importance and significance in the world, right? And so it will latch onto the most convenient story. Now, even though this guy so often says such beautiful things, Tony Robbins, right? And to some, it might seem, how could you say there's anything wrong with his stuff? How many people who go through the Tony Robbins stuff just become a Tony Robbins parrot and conveniently start doing a regurgitated version of the same thing? They're not his genetic descendants, right? Biological family. They are latching on. They find a story that ticks boxes they have, and they latch onto it, and they buy into it. And that's what I think Voldemort does. That's, I think, the formula of Voldemort. He finds a story that he can latch onto, and that is now directing his path. He finds out his dad's a muggle, which is, he's a half-blood trying to get rid of all the muggles. He's trying to fight in the world what he is inside because he can't accept himself. The first murder is at the age of 15 or 16. He kills his father and his grandparents. Doesn't even get to know them, nothing. It's just the hatred, right? All that pain is brewing up, and that is the first murder, right? And it's so symbolic because then he gets rid of the Tom Riddle name. Again, Rowling did it perfectly. He kills the... Tom Riddle is him. Tom Riddle is his dad. He's fighting what's in him. He wants to kill the Tom Riddle in him. So he must kill the Tom Riddle in the world, the symbol of what he is. And then he must spend the rest of his life ridding the world of everyone like that. He's trying to kill the muggle side of himself. All his followers are pure blood, but he's a half-blood. And Harry's a half-blood too. And it's that, I don't know if you've ever seen the film American Beauty, the Kevin Spacey one. Is it controversial to talk about Kevin Spacey? But there's a character in there who his son's not gay, but there's a neighbor, and he suspects for a second that his son's gay, and he just beats the shit out of him, and he's so angry. He's like, you can't be a faggot or whatever. And he thinks he's being gay with Kevin Spacey's character. But then this dad later in the film, who's very conservative, has like Nazi things in his cabinet, all this stuff, real military type, goes and tries to like make an advance on Kevin Spacey, thinking he's gay just because of something he saw. And Kevin Spacey's like, oh, no, I'm not, whatever. And the guy's like crying and goes away. And this guy's married with a wife because he's trying to. And so what happens is he actually goes and he then kills Kevin Spacey, his character. Because he's like, well, you've seen that part of me. I don't like being seen because I don't want to see it myself. So you have to go. Narrative it's the Voldemort thing.
Yeah, wow.
People attacking things in the world are only ever attacking what they don't want to see in themselves.
That's very powerful idea.
That's it.
Yep.
Hitler. And Gabor Mate said Adolf Hitler, Alexander the Great. Who was the other one? Stalin. Stalin was not from Russia. He was from Georgia. Alexander the Great was not Greek. He was Macedonian, or vice versa. And Adolf Hitler was born in Austria, not Germany. Napoleon's the other one. Napoleon's from another French region, not from France. Yet they not only go and rule that superior country. Austria is, subservient to kind of Germany, the French region of France. They not only conquer that, but they then go and dominate the world based on an idea that they are not themselves. Hitler, the Aryans, the blonde and all that, were the superior race. He wasn't blonde or tall. Right? And then the Jews are the ones to get rid of. So you see this narrative, the Voldemort narrative, perpetuating throughout all these figures from history who are insecure and they're outsiders and they feel like they need and it's so, the wound is so deep, they need to conquer the world with it. They must see it everywhere. And so many of the fake gurus today are just another version of that. In a time where it's less, maybe the flavor of our times is becoming less about physical colonialism, like going to that country and removing that and conquering the land and implementing our ideology. And now it just gets more and more ideological and psychological and educational. And those are the tools for colonialism now. And that's the Voldemort character. And he has everyone hoodwinked at Hogwarts. He has all the teachers wrapped around his finger. He's the head boy. And he has that positive reinforcement. So he has all that positive reinforcement. So much positive reinforcement, right? And he's hiding his true self. He's the ultimate actor. Dumbledore is never different in any situation, right? He's always just being himself. And Harry for the large part too. But Voldemort has everyone hoodwinked except for Dumbledore. He's the one guy, never really, whatever he says. Because Dumbledore's like, there's something not right here, the gut. Marvelous, marvelous just to design this character. It's so, what's the other point? It's just that it is so...
I wonder if J.K. Rowling knows this.
She might not. And fiction is this thing where you can supersede your own awareness.
It's
right?
incredible.
She probably doesn't. She probably doesn't, because all you have to do when you're creating great art is you just observe what you just create what you're seeing around you, and you might not know what you're actually seeing, but the fact that you reflect what you're seeing so well put the actual story there and make it easy for others to see, even beyond what you've seen. Right?
Because someone will extrapolate something completely different.
Exactly. Because they're cross-referencing with their experience.
Yeah.
It's like we're all putting our experiences in the middle.
Yes.
And that's what fiction really, I think, achieves better than anything else.
Yes.
Even someone else's story. So, the Voldemort character.
It's incredible.
And he goes down that path. That's the point, sorry. The narcissist, right? Voldemort's the ultimate narcissist. He thinks he's so important, right? The narcissist, even though they're so not aware of themselves, they are such a master at manipulating people because they so quickly see in others what is in themselves. So they can so easily see the need for importance or ambition or whatever. So he's such an expert. It's like most serial killers are so good at playing on people and hoodwinking them, even though they have such little self-awareness. Because they're so... It's so aggressive in them, so sensitive, that insecurity in them, that they can see it in everyone. So they know what to feed. They know how to feed the ego in you. So he's always complimenting someone where they... he uses his charm on the women, or for Professor Slughorn, who loves collecting people. He lets himself be a trophy, and he knows exactly how to prey on their weaknesses. Yet he doesn't understand the biggest things. And there's a scene that's not in the movies where Voldemort, a couple of years after leaving Hogwarts, no one knows what happened to him, right? And he works in a Borgin and Burke's, which is like a dark artifact shop. And they're like, you're wasting all your potential. You know what I mean? But why? Because dark objects, they're trophies. Trophies. And he's looking for a path to immortality. And we'll do an episode on Dumbledore and Voldemort's different paths for immortality. But we'll wrap this one up on Voldemort and his story. There's a scene where he comes back, and now for the first time, because he's quite good-looking, handsome young man, when he comes back under the pretense that he's looking for a teaching job at Hogwarts, and Dumbledore has become headmaster. And they refused to give him a job a couple of years ago. The old headmaster. Old headmaster dies, and he's looking for the Defense Against the Dark Arts job, which Dumbledore's never giving him. But they have this interaction, right? It's so powerful. And so he's already now darker. He's already doing things to himself to try and prolong his life. And he begins this long corruption of his body in the search for immortality, which reminds me of drug addiction so much. Yeah. And which is just a very observable physical addiction. There's so many forms of addiction, right? And he's already he looks different, right? And Dumbledore's a bit... But it's so funny that Dumbledore in this meeting is not making any attempts to really reform or enlighten him. He just sees that there's nothing he can do. And he says, you look, whatever, Tom, and I don't know about what you're doing. And Voldemort has this quote in that meeting, something like, greatness incites envy. Envy, because he's heard things about him. It's just people, I'm being great, so everyone's becoming envious and all this stuff. And he goes, surely you should know this, Dumbledore, And, if you will, just let me get the quote, because it's very powerful, and we'll finish up on this. It's a great way to finish. Damn it, where is it? It's such a good bloody quote. Yeah, where is it? It's here somewhere. Greatness inspires envy. Envy engenders spite. Spite spawns lies. You must know this, Dumbledore. Because he knows Dumbledore's the magnificent wizard of their time. Of his time, right? And Dumbledore challenges his understanding of greatness. He goes, well, it depends on what greatness is, right? And he goes, you're talking about love again. You know what I mean? Voldemort's like, you're talking about love again. He goes, and is it kumbaya?
Yeah.
Like mushy feely. Like we have all these ways to the ego, and a world created by ego. Love is so often this, love.
Here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. Yeah.
Good stuff.
And he goes, but nothing I have seen in the world has supported your famous pronouncements that love is more powerful than my kind of magic, Dumbledore. And Dumbledore says, this is such a Gilly line. Perhaps you have been looking in the wrong places. And ego just does not understand love. That's the big thing. That's why he can't understand why that greatness. And to me, it makes me think so much of, I really, trying to keep my ego on a leash, right? Astro the dog. I'm trying real hard lately. And I don't want to take down a whole, I don't want to overgeneralize, attack a whole group. But there's so much of this high achieving part of society that I think is living in an echo chamber, in a silo, that doesn't factor in the deep reality of what it actually means to have a good life, in my opinion. And they replace love with this achievement thing, right? And it's totally positively reinforced by society, right? And that's a narrative around greatness. That narrative around greatness is Shoe Dog and Steve Jobs and the Netflix story. And who cares if Matthew Perry's had addiction? He got to be on Friends. And it's, or it's, that's a shame. But, if that gets you to be famous, it's probably worth it. And Matthew Perry says in his book, I'd trade with anyone's life. Anyone. I'd give it all up to not have this disease I have. What a fucking story. And these people will just not see, they will not leave room for doubt because they're so locked into their definition of greatness. And, I'll be very honest about this, and this might upset someone, this story. Hey everyone, hope you're enjoying the episode. Just remember that any more like this are available on the channel. If you ever want more in terms of sometimes I share short stories I write, articles, and also updates around things in my world like comedy work, The Constant Student, book releases, things like that. I have an email newsletter called The Doorman. It's a Substack-based newsletter, and you can sign up for that. Just find the link in the description or the show notes based on wherever you're watching or listening to the episode. Thanks, and enjoy the wrap-up. But I'm not going to name a name. But I had someone the other day talking about they met this young person who was earning a lot of money every month, thousands and thousands of dollars a month, saying, I'm going to keep in touch with that person. And I go, why? They go, well, they're interesting. I go, is there something interesting in them other than they make a lot of money every month and they're young? And they're like, well, money's a blah, 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 and just goes through a justification for why that is a good person to know because they make a lot of money, basically. And I'm like, maybe I'm biased and maybe I have the luxury of growing up with the silver spoon in my mouth. I don't know. But the fact that someone makes a lot of money on its own, to me, is not enough to make it impressive. Nor is any external world achievement right now. I really understand if there is such a thing as greatness, which it might not be totally pointless trying to call something great anyway. It's totally about how someone has really mastered their inner world. But maybe I'm biased because I wouldn't be doing this if I thought something else, right? So obviously I'm here doing the podcast with you about that stuff because that's what I do consider to be. I don't know, to me, it seems like the proof is in the experience, but I think the people who are chasing the external achievement at the expense of internal health, but often not calling it, they're calling it a great experience too. So that's, again, for people to decide for themselves. But that's what I think about that interaction, which is the last real kind of proper interaction, though they never see Voldemort after that until he becomes the full, corroded version of evil. But he is that way for a reason. And that's the Voldemort backstory. Do you want to wrap up with anything?
That was pretty full on. I didn't realize the extent or the depth. I'm not sure how many people have. I'm sure if I do read them again, then it'll be weaved into my own experience, just like all those perspectives are with yours. And it's an incredible story. And J.K. Rowling is the real guru.
Yeah. No one calls her a guru.
No, it's incredible.
Famous. She's not. Yeah. I said to someone to wrap up. No, we got to go. But
yeah, I
said to someone, J.K. Rowling, I need to do this series because she's not getting any credit. And someone said, well, she's a billionaire and, blah, blah, everyone's read the books. I go, but that
children's books.
Yeah, these children books. I go, that is nothing. that is not the appreciation for what is in these books. That is nowhere near the appreciation. It's not that who cares, about that? That's nothing. What is in there is beyond most of what I've ever encountered. It's so well put together. So shout out to you, JK.
Shout out. If
Let's
you
get
ever
coffee
want to
If
go...
you want to come to Summer Hill and have some...
If we can get a... Yeah, if you want to come on as a guest.
If you want to just apply and...
should we do a pitch? This will increase your following. This will help you sell more books, maybe 2 or 3. This will... there's got to be 3 points. I read it once.
And you'll be great. You'll have greatness. You
will unlock even more potential. And the giant within. All right.
All right. Cut.